We're lucky to get a visit by our next guest. He's an America's accountant, Dan Geltrude. Dan, I've been reading about this a lot, and it's been in the news probably for about 4 or 5 weeks. We finally did a story on it because it's getting closer to the end of the year, and it's fresh in people's minds. But what's going on? I mean, look, everybody needs to pay tax on what they make, right? That's just the way. But this regulation and the regulatory nightmare that it throws up is pretty steep.
Yeah, and let me tell you why, Scott, and why the point you made about 1099-Ks being issued in error and how that all plays out. So let me give you a very simple example. So as you said before, they are lowering the standard for income reporting from 20,000 all the way down to 600. So basically, anytime you have a transaction, a sales transaction or a payment for services, and it's over $600, it's going to generate this Form 1099-K. Now, the whole thing about that is supposed to match to your tax return. And when it doesn't, well, then you get one of those little love letters from the IRS to ask what's going on. So here's the example. Let's say that you sell something on eBay, and let's say you sell it for $1,000. Well, you're over that threshold. So now that generates this 1099-K. So the IRS is looking for that $1,000. But you know what? You had, let's say, $900 of cost. So your actual profit on that is $100, not $1,000. So now what happens is you need to be able to support that the taxable amount is only 100 and not 1,000. So now all these small businesses that are transacting using Venmo and PayPal and these other online apps, you're going to have to make sure that you are keeping all the supporting documents for these transactions now. So it really becomes a headache.
That's absolutely ridiculous, number one. Number two is, how do they come up with $600 from 20,000? I mean, why not 1,000? Why not 500? $600? I mean, was that the sweet spot that they thought they were going to catch everybody in, number one? And the other thing is, Dan, what if I have 4 $200 transactions?
Okay, so your first question first. Where did the $600 come from? The $600 came from being consistent when any business has to report transactions over $600. I mean, the regular 1099 for miscellaneous income, that's already been in place. So I think they were looking for some consistency there. Now, as far as when you say, well, what if I have a bunch of $200 transactions? Well, Scott, that's going to go to getting that cumulative total over the 600, and then that's what generates the 1099-K. But you got to look at, this is simply overburdensome. Now, a lot of people are playing the card to say, oh, they're increasing my taxes. Let's be clear about something. When you have income, It doesn't matter if it's $1, you're supposed to declare it. So what people are thinking is, well, I used to get $20,000 of free income. Now they're taking it down to $600. That's not true. All it is that the IRS is saying, we're going to implement our matching system to make sure anytime you're receiving $600 or above, that it's on your tax return somewhere.
And so this is just, you're right, it is overreaching. It's going to be, once again, mom and pop shops, the middle America, small business, they're paying the price here, like they did over COVID, like they have with the labor, like they have with inflation. It's just another war on what supports our economy, which is small business.
That's exactly right. You know, Scott, people, of course, don't read the bills, which ultimately become laws through Congress. So this was, as you said before, part of the American Rescue Plan, right? So now it was in there and everybody ignored it. Now, you know what? We're within a couple weeks of the end of the year and people are like, oh, wait a minute. This thing is now included in 2022. Yep. I wasn't anticipating that. I didn't make any estimated taxes to make up for this. So lo and behold, you may think you're getting a refund, And you know what? You may end up owing with your tax return. So surprise, surprise. Let's hope enough people in Congress get together and say, listen, we got to reverse this aspect of that law.
Awesome. Thank you very much. You laid it out pretty clear. If I can understand it, everybody can understand it. I appreciate it, Dan. Dan Geltrude, Nutley, New Jersey. Thanks for being on the show.